Good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. It's been a while since I have made a video. Many of you know, probably most of you know, that my wife went through a very serious health crisis. And it's needed attending to. She spent quite a bit of time in the hospital, and it was very much life threatening. So I've been detached from all this for a while. And it's even now challenging to do it again. Uh, but I know that I think I'm supposed to. So, brief update if you didn't know this, she's home now. She come home on Christmas Eve. We had the most amazing Christmas. She's still tired and a little bit weak, but she's gaining. And so thank the Lord Jesus. We're living in grace. That's a fact. So anyway, every year about this time, just about every year, I may have missed a few years, probably for the last several years. Every year I go on Facebook or whatever, and I've issued the 13 for 31 challenge. And that's a challenge where I would challenge people to read Matthew 5 through 7 in a secret place out loud to themselves for 31 days. Okay? Start off their year. Now, I realize it's the 3rd of January, but we're not getting a late start. It's all right. It'll be just fine. I promise you. It's life changing if you just prioritize it. This is just a challenge that try to get us on course on some things. I'm doing it myself. My family's supposed to be doing it, but I don't like holding people accountable. The Bible doesn't say hold people accountable. It says submit yourself to one another in the fear of the Lord. You can't hold anybody accountable that doesn't want to be held accountable. But you can hold yourself accountable. Here's the key. Matthew 5 through 7 is the Sermon on the Mount. Excuse me. This is one of those situations where I think familiarity breeds contempt, and I'm sure it's the way with all humans, but in America, it seems to be particularly this way where I've been there, done that, I've heard that. Let's say you have to hear something 7 times, I think, before you begin to retain what's actually being said. So Matthew 5 through 7 is a message that Jesus gave it's the Sermon on the Mount. And at the very end of this message, Jesus says, if any man hears these words of mine and does them, these words. Now, I've heard people teach, well, all of Jesus' words are foundational words. It's true, I believe. I mean, obviously it's true. He's the Son of God. Whatever he says, he is the foundation. But Jesus himself specifically gave this discourse and then said, if any man hears these words of mine and does them, he'll be like a man who built his house on the rock. Excuse me. I don't see many people that, from observation, that I would say their house is built on the rock. I see a lot of people believe in Jesus, don't get me wrong. I believe in Jesus, but calamity or tragedy or difficulty, which everybody's going to have difficulty. In this world, Jesus said you have tribulation. Difficulty will expose your foundation, and it'll show where you really put your trust. It'll squeeze the sponge, and it'll show what's really on the inside of you. But Jesus said, if any man hears these words of mine and does them, he's like a man who built his house on a rock. If you didn't have anything else but Matthew 5 through 7, and you determined to obey Jesus, and you gave yourself to it, your life would be built on a rock. You don't have to know any of the rest of the Bible even. I know a lot of people don't like that, but it's true. If you determine that you love Jesus and you believe you were going to give your life to the obedience of what he said in Matthew 5 through 7. It will establish you on a rock. It takes 13 minutes to read Matthew 5 through 7. One of the greatest plagues that I see on our society in my age group, I recognize it in my own life, is a lack of discipline in our lives for the things that matter the most. People talk about not having a short attention span, yet they'll watch TV for hours on end, or they'll play video games for hours on end. They say they don't have an attention span. Well, you're paying attention to what you value. You have to choose what you value. I was listening recently. I have Sirius XM on my radio, and I just put it on the Billy Graham channel. Now, I've never been a big listener of Billy Graham. Especially when I was younger, he just seemed kind of bland to me, because now content matters more. But I really hadn't heard him that much. I'd only heard the TV stuff when I was a kid, and my grandparents always loved Billy Graham. But I was putting it on Billy Graham stuff, and I was playing his earlier stuff. And there was a level of purity that brought conviction to me that it's hard to explain in listening to him. Okay? There was a level of conviction that came from a much simpler time. And he was talking about the days of Noah. And this was probably the 1950s or 60s, maybe 70s. I don't know. And he was talking about how rampant sex was in society at that time. He was talking about pornography and people's availability to things that were debauchery, really. He was talking about in the days of Noah, how men were marrying and giving in marriage and giving themselves to marriage, and they were their imaginations were evil continually. And then he went on to talk about how at that time he couldn't tell the difference between the church and the world, really. And I was so convicted. I saw it in my own life. I want my life reestablished on the foundation. I want my imagination. I want my thoughts. I want my words. I want my convictions. I want to get my values set right. I'm a businessman, and a lot of high priority has gone into my business, and I want to be honest with myself in this time. I've taught this for a long time. I've taught it on here. That we say, if you ask people what their priorities are, they'll go, Jesus first, then family, then church, then business, however they line that up. But if you check at how people spend their time, or even more so, because you can be in the middle of doing something, if you check how people spend their imagination, what they think about, what they meditate on, what they give themselves to, then if they'll be honest with themselves as they check what they think about the most, they can align what their priorities are. Jesus' words are not easy, and he's not weak. He's not soft like most preachers try to declare him out to be. He had some hard sayings. Matthew 5 through 7 has some hard sayings in it. You're going to run into some stuff in that you're probably doing wrong. Jesus didn't make any apologies about it. He didn't soften it down. He said if a man looks on a woman with intent to lust, he's committed adultery with her already in his heart. I've done that. He says if your eye offends you, pluck it out and throw it away from you, because it's better for you to go through life missing an eye than to have your whole body thrown into hell. That's a hard saying, isn't it? Toward the end, he says, the way of life is narrow. He said, most people, the way to destruction is broad and wide and easier. And many people go in therein, but the way of life is narrow, it's hard. Few there be that find it. Further study shows it says that the way of life is narrow, and few there be that find it by searching for it. I think there's a lot of people that have Christians on their name tags. They pat themselves on the back because they walk down and they did the right thing. But in that Matthew 5-7, Jesus said, many will come to me in that. It's not everyone that comes to me and says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. What? I mean, I thought if I come down to the front and I pray the right prayer and I say the right thing. He said, not everyone that says to me, Lord, Lord. And that to me is fairly frivolous, trying to get your ticket, your insurance punched to go to heaven, still live your life your way. Not everyone that cries to me, Lord, Lord, will go to heaven, but they that do the will of my Father who's in heaven. I do believe you're born again by believing in Jesus and receiving in him as Lord. Romans 10 says, if we believe in our heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, that's a life-changing belief. That's a shocking, powerful, not just believing a story, grasping reality belief. If you believe in your heart that God raised Jesus from the dead, you believe he's sitting at the right hand of the Father, and you believe he's involved in all these things the way he says, and that things are going to unfold the way that he says they're going to unfold. If you believe that God raised Jesus from the dead and confess with your mouth he's Lord, you'll be saved. I'm terrified that a large percentage of people who claim to be Christians are going to come down to the end of their life having believed in a principle instead of a person. Having believed a story instead of a reality. And having had an argument instead of a life change. And when they breathe out for the last time and the pupils dilate, they're going to go to hell. Or they're going to be caught up before the Lord in the judgment. And they're going to say, Lord, did we not do all this stuff in your name? Went to church every Sunday? We did all this stuff? And he's going to say, depart from me, you work iniquity. I never knew you. There's some challenging things that we need to look at. But if we'll do it, if we'll read it and then we'll give ourselves to doing it, it will establish our life on a rock. I'm not trying to start a trend here. I'm trying to see people's life change here. A lot of people have already taken the challenge. The first time I did it, several hundred people took the challenge. But I'm going to tell you, as Americans, we're used to living our life our way, getting up, getting our routine the way we like to do stuff, and God is not in it. And yet we still say, God's number one. You're fooling yourself. I found myself emotionally destabilized in the crisis of my wife. Maybe one of the reasons I haven't done one of these for a long time is because I felt like a hypocrite. But I am challenging you along with me to not wait to get our life back on the rock, to build our house, our lives on the rock. Okay? So I bless you, love you. Thank you all for praying for me and for Crystal. And I hope this is a phenomenal year for you. It's been a phenomenal beginning for me.